Welcome to SAM Conversation, a program of South Asia Monitor. I'm Col Anil Bhat, and it's a pleasure to welcome Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha, former FOC-in-C, Western Naval Command. Old salt with a lot of operational experience and highly decorated too. Admiral Sinha, in the past few months, in fact, quite recently, the Indian Navy went through an Operation Sankalp, where I think it acquitted itself by, in a period of 100 days, it, I think, responded to 18 incidents, got popularly known as first responder or preferred security partner, did 1,000 boarding operations, nabbed 3,000 kgs of narcotics, was given an on-the-spot citation by the naval chief, and importantly, how INS Sharda on 2nd February conducted an anti-piracy operation where they rescued 19 crew members, 11 Iranians, 8 Pakistanis, and a very, very well coordinated operation where even the helicopter and the Parihar team were used. We, for a number of years, we've been involved in a number of, exercises with foreign navies like the Malabar and number of others. And the way we are, ensuring the safety of the Indian Ocean region is, I think, something which is for decades now. But what was a little worrisome is how the PLA Navy is becoming, it's getting a little too expansionist, particularly where the Indo-Pacific, South China, and East China Seas are concerned. I invite your comments.
Well, sir, namaskar to your viewers and you. Thank you very much, Colonel Bhatt, sir, for inviting me to your forum. I really have great respect for your questioning because these are very important questions. Coming back to what Indian Navy has been doing for last 100+ days that you talked about, the Operational Sankalp. Sir, this is the Indian Navy's peacetime role, ensuring security of all seafarers, the maritime security of all seafarers in the sea lanes of communication which pass through Indian Ocean region. This is the laid down task of the Indian Navy in peacetime. Apart from human assistance and disaster relief, anti-narcotics, anti-piracy, etc., etc. So it is irrespective of the nationality of the ship or the crew that as a seafaring country, as a responsible seafaring country, it is our duty to save lives, save the property, and ensure that the world trade carries on absolutely as it is in the free and open sea. Now, this has been Indian government's policy ever since we were independent. So I would say, sir, that this task is not new. And this Indian Navy has been involved in this for last 70 or 75, 79 years. The Indian Navy's, the force buildup has been done on this background. Whether the government of India um, had a policy of having a big navy or not, but the naval commanders, the naval planners, right in the beginning, they realized that Indian Navy's role will be to ensure safety from the Straits of Malacca to the Gulf of Aden and to the Straits of Hormuz. And the force buildup was done with that in mind as to how many ships will you require. On many occasions, the then government of India agreed, did not agree, did not give enough funding. And we realized that for a country which has just come out of colonization, there are so many requirements for development, industry, human development, education, healthcare. It will be very difficult for any government to buy everything from outside. Particularly, the naval assets are high value and it takes a long time to build. To give that kind of money, it would not have been possible for any government to support the naval requirement for the task which Navy has given for itself. Mind you, this task was laid down by the Navy and submitted to the government. And government neither said yes nor said no. So therefore, we assumed that it is acceptable and we went ahead. And right in the beginning, the naval planners decided that we have to build our own warships. And therefore, the public sector, the PSUs, shipyards, they were given charge to the former naval officers or naval officers of the engineering and construction branch who were asked to retire and take on the task of the CMD so that they understood what the naval requirement was of a ship and what kind of ship it requires and what is the time frame, because they have been part of the policy making in the Navy. And we made a naval design bureau. We have our own designers who design the ship right from the drawing board. And thereafter, they give it to the shipyards to build it. Now it is again headed by a naval officer with all the technical expertise of civil world, fabrication, shipbuilding, fitment, electronics, etc., etc. So I would say that the whole ecosystem has been built since the early 60s. In 65, yes, first ship which came out was INS Nilgiri. It was built completely in India. However, our weapon systems did not match. The development did not match the requirement. And therefore, the weapon systems had to be imported. And subsequently, DRDO tied up and we started making in collaboration. So that is just to tell you that why do we have such a big workforce and how we have managed in spite of Navy getting the least amount of funding, which I'm sure you'll agree, you are an army officer yourself, you have seen this. But what has happened, sir?
If I may, please just intervene here.
Sure.
Admiral Sinha, you being very modest. What happened till 1971 was that I keep shooting my mouth off about the Indian Navy, but it's a service I have a lot of time for, and right from before the National Defense Academy, having had an uncle in the service, and right from the National Defense Academy, one has always been fascinated by the Navy. The government was, as I put it, sea blind for forget about 1947-48, where even with those few comets with which we began, we could have done, quite a bit of damage. In 1965, we didn't think about, and in 1971, Admiral Nanda, popularly known as Charles, he grabbed the opportunity, from Mrs. Gandhi, and he proved what you all were all about. The way those very recently acquired missile boats, the way they were taken, and every single operation carried out since, in fact, since before the war officially began. In both the western and eastern seaboards, the Indian Navy, for the first time being launched, but it proved it's more than proved its, worth. And that's, and since then, I think when when the Indian Navy operated for the Goa liberation, eyebrows were going up. Oh, so India has a navy. I mean, that was the attitude towards India. And yet, you all being the silent service, yeah, you all achieved a lot. And I say that now is sort of a very testing time. I have no doubt that in any confrontation, having seen how the PLA, functions in a state of war like it was in 1967, that was the second time that we. After that, they pressed us very hard that let's not fire at each other. So that is the mindset of the PLA, whether it's Army, Navy, or Air Force. They're very good at building up. They've got a tremendous arsenal. But anyway, I wait for your comments on, please continue.
No, you're right, sir. You're right that the country was sea blind. And let me for a minute act as a devil's advocate. Sir, there are big reasons for it. If you see India's history, most of our threats have come from the land. They have come from the northwestern region, and right up to the Mughals, who came from the Central Asian region, crossed into what present-day Pakistan, and Mughals established a rule here of which lasted for nearly 500 years, maybe more. And when the British came, they came by sea. They came for trade. They came to Calcutta first. But they realized that during the Mughal time, slowly whatever navy we had a navy during the time of King Ashoka, during the time of Cholas. We had a very good navy, and Shivaji on the western seaboard. So these were all various different states within the purview of the greater Indian nation. But they were never acted as a one navy or one armed force, because they were all small princely states. And they all had their individual problems with either the Portuguese or the British, or on the eastern side with smaller countries who are, size smaller, not having enough navy. Like Cholas also encountered some hurdle. Indonesia, Malaysia, they encountered, but they're very small. So they all grew their own navies in their own right, and they gave a very hard time to the British. But as the Indian Navy, we didn't exist, which was first time realized by the British. And British also realized that during the Mughal time, there has been a complete or shall I say desiccation of the existing naval structure of the state called India. Bharat Varsh ka jo tha, that was destroyed.
Absolutely.
Whereas the Shivaji Navy, there was a Chola Navy, everything. So it suited the British because it was all in fractions. And they wanted to keep it like that. And therefore, they kept telling the Indian leaders at that time who were fighting for independence that, look, you had a problem from the northwest. You have a problem with China sitting in the north. And one day it will become your big problem. And therefore, protecting your land borders is most important. And that has been ingrained into our polity for a long time. And I would hazard to say that it is slowly going away, but it is still there. And which is right. Which is right. Yeah, which is right, sir, because after all, we don't want to lose any territory. Territorial integrity, when we talk, it is on the northern and northwestern border, areas through which the British, for the Mughals came. And now you have China and independent Pakistan, who is sitting into Pak-occupied Kashmir, and China, who's using Islamic slicing and pushing you down. And therefore, to government's attention, and in a very difficult terrain where a lot of manpower, a lot of human lives are lost, it concerns the government. And therefore, a lot of money was being devoted. But now that there is a relative peace, I wouldn't say peace, it's an uneasy peace, but there is peace. The government has realized that no, there is more to grow, because you have hardly any land trade. From the time the present government has come to power, and the present prime minister, he being probably from a maritime state, Gujarat, he understands the maritime world better than what we had in the past. We didn't have any leader who understood the maritime world
No
Whereas
doubt,
this,
no doubt.
yeah, and this gentleman has got a maritime thinking in his mind because it belongs to a state. So now we have that, yes, we have to protect the sea lanes of communication. What Navy has been saying since 1947 is correct, and we need to support the Navy. So now you'll find that gradually from 10% to 12% to 15% to 16% to 17%, and yet you are managing. Like you mentioned that how what the Navy has been doing. Yes, we are managing because the Navy started planning for this in 1960s. It started building its own ship. And we have today, happy to say that there are very one odd ship which is imported. Otherwise, every ship is built in India, including the aircraft carrier, which is a big technical jump. So I would say, sir, that what we are doing now, why the name has come so much, the merchant vessel Ruin, its hijacking, and then Indian Navy taking over. Shardas, you mentioned, very right, sir. But this is our actually primary duty. And therefore, we consider this as a day-to-day life. Why it has come into light? Yes, the activities of the piracy, hijacking has increased from the time Houthis have started attacking the merchant shipping, which is passing
Yes,
through the Red Sea and Suez Canal. What is happening is that as a revenge of the loss of the lives in Gaza, because of the Hamas-Israel problem, the Houthis want to take a revenge. Primarily, they wanted to attack the American and the Israeli assets which passing through, but it is difficult to identify which ship were bound unless they are monitoring the International Maritime Organization website, which they are. Therefore, you'll find that they haven't attacked any Indian ship today. They haven't attacked any Chinese ship today.
uh,
Right? They have attacked other ships, but not Indian ships. So you will find that the what Indian Navy is doing is benevolence. जैसे कहते हैं ना वो
uh,
पूरा क्या वसुधैव कुटुंबकम जो कहते हैं, it
yes,
is
yes,
truly the Navy's function.
no doubt, no doubt. If I may please, request you to look at, there's the PLA Navy has been very, very active in, uh, snooping. And that isn't that a bit worrisome? I'm sure that the Indian Navy is not at all letting that go. And I can understand that they may not be we may not be able to discuss all that is being done, but if you can throw some light on, because whether it's our involvement with the Quad or some of the exercises which we've been having with Singapore, um, then of late with the Vietnamese, the Japanese, is it making a difference? Is it making the Chinese, a little uneasy, to say the least?
Sir, I would say it's a very good question you've asked, particularly to naval officer who spent nearly 42 years in the Navy. So this has been always a matter of concern, and now the concern has grown even more. As you rightly said, the Chinese Navy ships are snooping in this area. So the problem is at sea there are no borders, and it is open to the world to use the sea. Even today, the shipping is the cheapest mode of transportation, even today. And most of the logistics for India, it is 95% of our trade is on seas because we don't have any land neighbor who's your friend. Who will you trade with? And Bangladesh recently, that's it. Others are only, they hardly any trade. Others are
Absolutely, absolutely.
living on your booty, really. So I would say that this has been realized by the government that the trade has to be protected and not as an offensive role, as a defensive role, that we will protect our trade wherever it is passing through. And mind you, sir, the seas are very large. 70% of the world is ocean. Similarly, in India, we have more sea area than land. If you just look
Absolutely.
at the map,
No
you'll
doubt,
find that
no doubt.
you'll see blue more than what you see white in the
Yes.
center. But of course, we have a very troubled border. You can't ignore that. You cannot ignore it. Must remain your primary, security concern, certainly. But here there is a lot of scope for security problem, which is happening now at sea. So what has happened is that therefore, because the sea is big, no one country's asset can ensure maritime security in the whole world. Because the 70% of water, not one country can have. Many years ago, sir, in 2007, I used to be Fleet Commander, Western Fleet, and we had then CNO of US Navy, Admiral Mike Mullen, who later on became the Joint Chiefs of Staff head, and then he retired. A great man. He was touring India, I was touring Bombay, and he came to visit the Virat, and we were walking on the flight deck on top. And then at the end of it, there was a press briefing on board the ship. And he said that we need 1,000 ship navy to ensure maritime security in the world. Now he was misquoted by a lot of people in the press at that time that US Navy is going to build 1,000 ship navy. So I had to do a lot of firefighting after he left, which he said. In fact, he called me. He said, Admiral, thank you very much for saving my skin. I said, sir, I know what you meant. You meant the world should have 1,000 ship navy. Mind you, sir, as an aside, with Chinese Navy having built up so much, US Navy so much, Indian Navy so much, world still has not reached the figure of 1,000 ships, sir.
The Chinese have
Still-
370 ships, they're aiming for 435.
Sir, what I'm saying is, I'm talking about this 2007, and we are in 24. Even now, the world, all navies put together, has not reached 1,000 ships.
Not reached
And
the
his,
third.
his estimate was that it require 1,000 ship navy to ensure security. So obviously, even now the security is not 100%. I'm just trying to make that point. So therefore,
Yes, no doubt.
you
no
got
doubt.
to have a cooperation. You have to have like-minded countries coming together and contributing to security in their own area. That is why you will find whenever there is a bilateral visits of Prime Minister and the team, the first thing to be agreed is maritime security cooperation. This is the reason. No other reason. You don't want to make a navy big. No, we want to make sure that your trade and my trade should be secured. How do we secure it? We'll work it out. So this is the maritime security का meaning ये होता है that do we have enough assets to help our friends, or do the friends have enough understanding to participate? As a result, in Indian Ocean region, we have a very robust maritime domain awareness network. This your viewers must understand. What it means is that sea being so large, if you stand at the tip of India on the Indira Point, it is 1,500 kilometers towards Straits of Hormuz, Gulf of Aden, and 1,500 kilometers towards the Straits of Malacca. You're looking at a diameter of 3,000 kilometers, and you rotate it like this. It's hell of a lot. You will require, I don't know how big a navy, it is not possible. So you have to tie up with your neighbors. So we have tied up, you mentioned about the bilateral exercises. Yes, we have with Myanmar, we have with Bangladesh, we have with Thailand. We have 24 maritime neighbors in the Indian Ocean. And we have bilateral with all 24, including the Gulf. So, but gradually, because of China's economic rise, China also had a military rise. And now China is looking to displace the United States from the number one position in the world. And therefore, they say that the international order, the world order, is going to change. What is this world order which is going to change? Till now, after the Cold War ended, we have had a virtually US-led order in the world, a Western model by which the most powerful country, economically and militarily, they had their own way. They're an hegemon. They did what they wanted anywhere, and everybody accepted that leadership. But now China wants to displace the Americans from this number one position. Displace how? Economically and militarily. There are only two elements, two levers of state power, as far as I understand. One is economy, one is military. Now, these two levers of state power China is nearly caught up in one, that is economy. Nearly there. And it is going to displace US, no doubt. So that leadership. However, as far as the military power the leadership is concerned, though it has made a lot of things, my own very personal belief is that China will not able to displace the Americans in foreseeable future. Because the complex, the technological complex, military complex, which is with the US, it is not possible for China to catch up in the foreseeable future. What China has done is, because of the little bit of largesse of the Americans, most of the manufacturing, even of defense related or dual technology items, were transferred to China because of the low cost of building. And China has done very well to steal the, the IPRs, and they've started manufacturing all this on their own. And now they are very good at, cyber espionage, cyber stealing, etc., etc. So I would say that thankfully the US has woken up and they have put this restriction. The West has woken up. I would say that they will resist to the hilt so that China does not become number one technologically. They will not allow them to happen. Because when you say it is Chinese-led world order, we are asking for problem because they're all autocracies. There are four countries. I don't want to name, you know them. One of them, two of them are friends. These four countries, autocratic setup, single party rule is not what Indians want. We have 1.4 billion people and we have 1.4 billion different minds. Indians are known to have their independent mind, and therefore the strategic autonomy and independence of thinking, it cannot go away. If anybody says India will become an ally, I can give it in writing. India will never become an ally to anybody. Never. So we have a Quad. Quad has no military connotation. No, nil. It has only got economy, it has got technology, it has got pharmaceutical, it has got space, which is primarily to build capabilities in the countries which the Quad feels that they need to be brought up. Because the US realized that if by themselves, if they start doing everything, it is not possible. So they have gone back to what Mike Mullen said in 2007, that, we have to be ahead of everybody else. So now they have realized that, yes, Mike was correct. And they are making sure that if you can't do alone, you choose your partners in different areas of the world. Indo-Pacific, you mentioned. It consists of Indian Ocean, South China Sea, and the Pacific. In Pacific, US is all pervasive. Now they have taken Australia and the loop. South China Sea, Japan, and US. In Indian Ocean, India and US. So these are the four leaders of their own regions. And therefore the Quad. Yes, we have an organization called Malabar, where the navies of all four countries are together and they exercise. Now the exercise, mind you, sir, the Malabar started as a bilateral exercise between India and the US. It was not meant for anybody else.
Yes.
Why it happened, I must tell you, your viewers must know. It happened because when the Cold War ended, 1989, 1990, the Americans always thought that India is an ally of the Soviet Union because we bought items from Russia, Soviet Union, later on Russia, without realizing that we bought it because we didn't have access to the Western technology. America is the one who denied us the technology when we asked for it in 1962.
Yes,
it is
absolutely.
Russia.
Yes.
So Russia came to our rescue and they gave us at a very reasonable price. And therefore, Russia has been our defense supplier since then. And even now, our
No, no.
legacy items, etc., almost 50-55% is still Russian. And it will remain so for quite some time because you don't just write off. So Russia has become our pillar. So when Secretary Blinken was asked recently, last year in US by somebody, that, how are you sort of letting India have best of both worlds? They are buying so many Russian. He said, well, they are buying because we didn't give it to them. Now we have to give it to them so that they don't buy from Russia anymore. So that, that correspondent was speechless. Secretary of State saying this in US to a correspondent who was from some American journal. I just happened to be traveling and I sort of saw this. I said, there is. And then I quoted in some article, and after that, it has been quoted quite frequently. So what I'm saying, sir, that these four countries will have to be together. Technologically, if they are together and they are very close to each other's technology, then you can resist the Chinese aggressiveness. China is not only rising, it is very aggressively rising. You look at its economic coercion in the India's neighborhood. Sri Lanka, Maldives, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Nepal, Bhutan, you name it. Pakistan is by and large a vassal state. By and large, by name it is Pakistan, but it
Yes,
has
yes.
nothing. The all entire military is run by the Chinese. The entire economy is run by the Chinese. It's only a matter of time that Gwadar will have a full-fledged Chinese fleet. It's only a matter of time. They have started in Djibouti. They will have one in one of the ports on the eastern part of Africa. I know which ports they are looking for, but it may not happen because, they are very close to India as well. So that tussle is going on right now. So I think, sir, that unfortunately at sea, the total traffic at sea at any given time, 90% is merchant ship, not warship. You just can't keep go shooting. It's not black and white. ये LAC है, उसके उधर दुश्मन है, इसके उधर दोस्त है. Because here you leave your territorial waters of 12 nautical mile and everybody is your friend. It is not only the law of the land which we have to protect. We follow the International Maritime Organization rule of seafaring.
Yes,
We
yes,
also
yes,
follow one
yes.
clause, United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. It is
See,
not
yes,
only
yes.
meant for warships. It gives the right of innocent passage to every ship in the world, including warship. But each country has been given the option that for warships, you can frame your rule, as long as you can enforce it. So, for example, India has framed a rule that in the contiguous zone, which is 24 nautical miles, no foreign submarine can transit submerged. It has to be on the surface and flying that country's flag. So if any other submarine in 24 nautical miles, roughly about 44, 45 kilometers from the coastline, if any submarine which is not ours and it is transiting and our anti-submarine forces have caught hold of him,
Detected
it
it.
can, it can force it to surface. There are ways of indicating. We have scare
Yes,
charges,
yes,
fire.
yes.
So you surface. If it does not surface, on two warnings, on the third one, they are legally entitled to drop a depth charge bomb. Right,
Um,
sir?
we unfortunately short of time, Admiral Sinha, but thank you so very much for bringing some of these very very uh, very important aspects out. Because particularly your last one about how uh, you know um, an offensive submarine can be dealt with. Uh, and maybe never have to do it, but it's reassuring that it's there's so much more. We'll certainly try to meet again. But thank you very
But,
much.
sir, just one correction. It has been done, sir. We have done it ourselves to the submarines, forced
Ah,
it to
ah.
surface. And when it did surface, we did drop the depth charge and nearly killed that submarine. Unfortunately, by then he went out of the Indian. He was also transiting, so he went out of the contiguous zone. So we observed the rules very meticulously because there's nobody to monitor you. So a self-discipline is very important as far as implementation of UNCLOS is concerned. So we do it very religiously. But we are also a seafaring nation. We are not only military, we are seafaring nation. We are like any other seafarer. Tomorrow somebody makes a SOS, we have to help. He can be
No, and
Pakistani.
the Indian Navy has a very very solid history of assistance
Yes,
in the tsunami. Countries reached out to us to um,
yes,
yeah, even up to Indonesia,
yes.
we gave assistance. No,
True, sir.
no, of that there's no doubt. Um, thank you very much, Admiral Sinha. We look forward to meeting again.
Thank you very much, sir. It will be a pleasure to come back. Thank you for calling me, sir.